or death, there seems to be no sign the protesters are being deterred. At his home in Yangon, the body of Si Tu, a 37-year-old trishaw peddler, lies under a green cover. He was shot overnight on Friday as the security services tried to disperse protesters who'd gathered outside a police station in Taketa district. The protesters were calling for the release of 3 men arrested in raids earlier in the night.
I told my son that we have nothing and will die if we go against them. I'd go and shoot back at them if I had a gun. Now we can't do anything. Tell me, do we always have to keep silent and die? Why are we dying for doing the right thing?
Filmed furtively from an overhead window, these pictures show one of those arrests. Dragged from their homes, several men are hit and kicked by the police. Beatings like this have become commonplace, conducted in public for maximum impact.
Soldiers shot at our sit-in strike last night and arrested 3 people and were beating them. So all of us residents asked them to release the arrested people at the police station. Then they fired live rounds at us. One died over there and another one died here.
But the bullets and beatings haven't deterred the protesters. Using fireworks and petrol bombs behind makeshift bamboo barricades, they try to slow the advance of the army and police. And a rapid retreat under the returning volley of tear gas and smoke. Using speed and stealth, they scatter and regroup to take another stand, even if it means risking their lives and making the ultimate sacrifice. Tony Cheng, Al Jazeera.
Facing live ammunition fire, rubber bullets, tear gas, and more water cannon, the anti-coup protesters defied a ban and headed out to the streets in their thousands for a 4th straight day. The military junta has barred any gathering of more than 5 people and imposed a curfew in many areas from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Undeterred and determined, from many walks of life, the protesters still came out.
If the civil disobedience movement accelerates in the country as a whole, the government machinery will stop. Not only the lawyers, I hope all the people will join the movement. We must not lose, and nor is a draw acceptable. We must win. That is why we are on the street now.
In Yangon, police prepared for the protesters in the early hours. There were 2 main areas in Myanmar's largest city where they gathered, by City Hall and a large intersection near the University of Yangon. In the country's 2nd largest city, Mandalay, thousands of protesters faced water cannon and at least 27 people were arrested. International condemnation of the coup has grown over the last few days. New Zealand, the first country to go a step further.
New Zealand is suspending all high-level political and military contact with Myanmar. Minister Mahuta has also directed that New Zealand's aid program to Myanmar should not include projects that are delivered with or benefit the military government. We've also agreed to implement a travel ban to be formalised in the coming week on Myanmar's military leaders.
Further international action is expected. After a request by Britain and the EU, the United Nations Human Rights Council will hold a special session on the February 1st coup and all that's been happening in Myanmar since. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera.
Earlier, I spoke to Chris Sidoti, who's a co-author of the report, The Economic Interests of the Myanmar Military. He's also a former expert member of the UN International Independent Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar. He says economic sanctions may be one of the few ways foreign countries can influence the military.
The military has always been interested in maximising the income of the individual generals at the top and more broadly funding military operations. They take around 12 to 13% of the state budget in Myanmar, so there's a lot of money going into the military from the state budget. But they increase their take through all of these business enterprises, and they're enriching themselves through it. Sanctions are important, though, because the military feels the pressure of economic isolation. There's no doubt about that. And so the decision announced last week by the Japanese company Kirin to withdraw from a joint venture with the military in Myanmar's largest brewery is a very important decision. Kirin had previously stopped paying dividends to the military and now has announced it will withdraw from the joint venture. This kind of pressure is absolutely essential at this time, now that the military has retaken control of the state. The pressure is mounting, and the pressure is on the military directly and on its partners to cut off the dollars, to cut off supplies. There are very few ways in which we can influence events in Myanmar, but what is happening at the moment is a tragedy, and the very least we can do is to stop funding the military.
Well, let's now bring in Carl Wynne, who's the Executive Director of the Burma